Accountants can never be looked down on if the aim and purpose of the country are to be achieved. Yes, they play an important role in development of economy and contribute efficiently to the development of businesses and organizations across the board. Accounting is essential to the world because financial statements are communications that fuel the investment decisions that drive the economy. They find themselves at the front line of safeguarding the integrity of financial reporting and defending the quality of financial reporting right at the source where the numbers and figures are produced. The President, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, who's a fellow of the Chartered Accountant, is Dr. Innocent Okosa, is here with me live in the studio to discuss issues around the profession and, of course, around the economy. Thank you so much, Dr. Okosa. It's good to see you live in the studio.
Thank you, Tolu, for having me with you. I'm happy to be back to your studio.
Yes, after a long while.
A very long while.
Well, let's start with congratulating you. Yes, we covered that report and we had it as the new president of ICANN. Now, I want to ask the question this way. Now, what should professionals and, of course, the country expect differently from this administration? You know, many people say we'll consolidate on what we have on ground, but what should we expect differently at this time?
So we've chosen the team, ICANN, and in an upward trajectory. So that's the theme, and that's what we expect members, stakeholders, and all relevant those who watch the Institute to see. So in this upward trajectory, we will be more visible in the affairs of the economy. We will have more engagement with the relevant stakeholders, be them members of the Institute, be them the press, be them the government agencies. One of the other things we said is that our voice will be heard on national issues. And it will be in terms of depth and breadth. And we are going to pursue that vigorously in this administration. There are things that are developing within the profession. IFAC is talking about future-ready accountants. That also has to translate in the local environment. And the impact of technology on the work of accountants. We have to modernize our examination process. And we have issues around the profession locally in Nigeria. And we hope to engage the National Assembly in that direction and all sister professional bodies. So engagement with the relevant stakeholders and the visibility within what is happening in the economy. That's what we're going to pursue this year.
Interesting stuff. Let's move to the ICANN Accountability Index. I've followed it for some time, and I really want to know what is the rationale behind this development, and how do you think that these reports have impacted governance across the board?
Good. So the ICANN Accountability Index is a framework that the Institute developed to measure public finance and accountability in government and MDAs. So it's a tool that is fashioned after the PEFA framework. Within the local parlance, we have the SIFTAs. So SIFTAs is state fiscal transparency, accountability, and sustainability framework, which some states are already complying with because through that the World Bank disposes an amount of money. And what we saw happen is that once SIFTAS was introduced, then you see compliance in terms of public accountability. So for instance, where states were not making their budget in public, they started making because they're going to get. So the ICANN Accountability Index is wider than the SIFTAs. We have about 5 pillars. The first one is about policy-based fiscal strategy and budgeting. Okay. And we have the second one, budget credibility. And we have asset management, asset and debt management. And we have budget execution, accounting, and reporting. Then you have the fifth one, which is around external scrutiny, external and legislative scrutiny. So if you adopt this framework, there are bits and they can be broken down. Yeah. So, for instance, in the area of the first pillar, you talk about a budget engagement where you engage the citizens in preparing the budget. If you engage the citizens, you're going to ask them, what is it really that you need? What is it that you want? And they call it citizens' budget, and some states won award based on that. Wow. Okay, because the ICANN Accountability Index goes wider than these other ones, in the area of budget execution, accounting and reporting, that's what we call variance analysis. Because what is presented to Nigerians is first the budget itself. But what happens with the implementation of the budget, we do not pay much attention to that. Right. So variance analysis helps you to do this is what you budgeted and this is what is actually achieved. In budget credibility, we talk about revenue budgeting. How much did you budget for your revenue? Or what are the bases? What are the criteria? Expenses. So all these indices, and then you have to host it on the website. It should be available to the citizens. When you do all that, you could see that you are improving on your accountability and transparency in managing public funds and resources that have been entrusted onto you as a state. So that's what ICANN Accountability Index is meant to achieve. And our advocacy is that because the SIFTAS is going to come to an end, we are advocating that the World Bank should use the ICANN Accountability Index as a basis of rewarding states that commit to transparency and accountability in public finance management in Nigeria.
Brilliant stuff. There's a series of developments now across the business environment. You will agree with me, and I also see that you also addressed the press conference with regards to some national economic issues since President Tinubu took over. There's been some bold steps. Some have said that this is the way to go, clarity around business environment and all of that. But let me ask in that form that what will be your general understanding or reaction to some of these early moves being made by the new administration?
Yeah, like, we've published two statements in that direction. One on the removal of the fuel subsidy. The other one is the unification of the exchange rate. And we support the bold step that the Tinubu administration has taken so far because we believe in the long run it is good and will help boost the economy. But we've always advocated for the lower income group to be catered for, because the essence is at the end of the day, they should not feel so much impact or disadvantaged. Because if the whole essence of government is to better the life of the citizens. So if we have removed subsidy, we'll optimize, so we'll unify the exchange rate. What is the end point for the citizens? That's what matters. We believe we boost the economy, it will attract foreign direct investment, and then we expect that it trickles down to the masses in terms of improved, better life, better living, and they begin to enjoy the dividend of democracy, and that's what we want.
I want to follow up that question when you talk about the people, we say the vulnerable ones, and government will say cash transfers and all of this. Being a financial expert, what do you make of all of them? Because some will say, how do we get the right people sometimes? Or what scheme do you think is workable to really get these people that are vulnerable so that the money gets to those that it should get to?
Sorry, I didn't get a bit of cash transfer.
In all of this cash transfer, government tries to send money, 5,000 naira to all of these people. So what I'm saying, are there other means you think government can reach those people down there?
I don't think that maybe cash transfer
is the way to go, right?
Maybe that's the Chinese proverb that say, teach me how to fish, rather than just giving me fish. I think that's the way to go. And we have issue of human capital development in this country. And there are a lot of skills that abound within the citizens that are not fully developed. So can we get to a point where we are able to develop the potentials, the talents that exist in the country? Because even in trade, in petty trade, in the skills that people have, can we have a scheme that can unlock those potentials and skills that are bound within the citizens? I think that's the way to go, rather than just transfers money, because
Honestly, many people fall that. Well, let's move on with our reaction. Now, there is a reaction to the expected ministerial list that we see that the chief of the military, that's the chief of defense staff and naval staff, they're all being screened at the moment at the Senate. But there's this reaction to the expected ministerial list from President Tinubu, talking about square peg in a square hole, round peg in a round hole, like you say. But what is your professional advice if you were to advise the president on the kind of people that he needs to work with? We know that Nigeria needs the right set of people at the moment. We have a challenge which we must address, and it has to do with our economy.
Populate your cabinet with professionals. There are distinguished and professionals that have excelled in their profession. But above all, we look at what the president has done so far as bold step in, taking those bold steps in the economic reforms that he has done. But one other call we are putting across to the president is to populate his cabinet with more of chartered accountants. More of chartered accountants should be appointed, because we have empirical evidence which shows that the more accountants you have in a workforce, the better performance for the organization. And we have that proved using data from Zenith Bank, which is in the private sector, from Federal Land Revenue Services, which is an MDA, and from Lagos State Government, which is a state government. And I'm sure, Tolu, if you employ more chartered accountants in this your studio,
we have a team of them here too, and they will come see you before you leave today.
So you see that is a proven thing. So what the Tinubu administration should do is to populate its cabinet with more of chartered accountants, because these have inside them the mind of accountability. And if that trickles down, and all this issue of corruption, because you will know the impact of corruption, they will disappear. So that's what you should do.
Interesting stuff. Staying with that, now you're almost hitting my next question, because I wanted to say chartered accountants play a very important role in economic growth and development, of course, managing fraud and every other thing. We know we will talk about all of this, but how has the institute itself been able to manage erring members one way or the other? Yes, as good as it sounds, some members would also, there'll be some shortcomings somewhere. How do you manage all of this so that the next person will know that I must be transparent, accountable, in all that I do?
Right. So I break your question into two parts. The first bit is about the role of accountants in the economy.
Economy, yes.
So I think you stated it initially when we started. The accountant hold the key to accountability within the public sector and the private sector. The information that we need to hold public office holders accountable is provided by the accountant. The information we need for investors to invest in the economy is provided by the accountant. So accountants are indispensable. When economists talk, they talk in terms of, aggregate, if I put it that way. But the nitty-gritty of operationalizing that which the economist talked about is the accountant that executes that. So you talk about revenue, you're going to generate so much money from the oil. Who accounts for that? So it is what the accountant gives you. In terms of revenue, in terms of expenditure, in terms of the budgeting, in terms of finding out whether you have performed according to what you have planned in budgeting. That's the accountant. That's the accountant. So you can see that you can't talk about economy without talking about the accountant, without the role of the accountant. Now, coming to your second part of the question, how do we deal with members. So we have a very rigorous disciplinary process within the institute. There are codes of conduct that every accountant is expected to comply with. Professional behavior. If you go against what we deem to be unprofessional behavior, you go through the disciplinary process. And that disciplinary process may result in you being delisted, your license being taken back, and your name being published. And we have instances where our members who have committed one error or the other, or one professional misconduct, have been disciplined. And that is why it is also good to engage professional accountant, because the profession will discipline an erring member. Unlike you go and get an accountant on the street that doesn't belong to any profession. If he does anything, there's no way you can. So that's why we always advocate that you engage with professional chartered accountants. And chartered also gives them another layer of discipline.
Interesting. Well, almost finally, I know every profession deals with quackery and people trying to infiltrate and maybe spoil that name of that good profession. Somebody will just try to do one thing or the other. Are you looking at speaking with maybe the Senate and all of that to look at addressing issues of quackery? Some will say you need some laws and all of that. How has it been? How is your relationship also with lawmakers with regards to laws that would ease your day-to-day activities about the accounting profession?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Tolu, because one of the things we've been battling with is the issue of the proliferation of accounting profession. To us, it's not a challenge. It's not a really big issue, because our last engagement with the National Assembly was very fruitful, and they understand that they cannot legislate monopoly. That's their thinking, which is good. We don't have any problem with that. And we've developed, good relationship. We understand ourselves better now because of the engagement that we have. But what is not good is a situation where a profession is made to go and join another profession before it can practice what is already been licensed to practice. That is not good. And on the issue of quackery, you get that everywhere. But we have a robust system to identify those who do not belong to the profession. We have a list of members of the institute. And that's why it's always good. We advise organizations to always verify. If somebody holds himself as a chartered accountant, we have a register of members within the institute.
Good.
So make inquiry and get information from the institute. It can easily be confirmed. And again, when you see the work of the quack, you will know it's different. You will know the difference. Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap up on this note. It's going to be a busy year, of course, always full of activities for you. I know that because at least I've followed the ICANN presidency for some time. So tell us, the conference is also coming. A lot of what will be the focus for this year? What is your message to members?
Good. So this year's conference is, I think the title is around Nigeria, the imperatives for inclusive development. Inclusive, yes. That word is... Yeah. And why did we go this way? All these policies that government is introducing, the new government is introducing, our expectation is that at the end point, it will lead to inclusive development. When you look at the SDGs, SDG 1 to 7 is issues around poverty, hunger, health, education, clean water, gender, energy. And that's what we want, a situation where the gap between the rich and the poor is narrowed. And we begin to talk about inclusive development. Not development that is meant for the upper class, and they are the only one enjoying all the benefit that accrues from all these policy reforms that the government is introducing. So that's what we want to address. And there are subheadings around that also talks issues around the role of accountant in governance, trust in governance. And is an opportunity where you see a gathering of over 6,000 chartered accountants in one spot. We expect that the President, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, who himself is an accountant, will come and declare this conference open in Abuja come October 9 to 13, when all the accountants will gather in Abuja. And Tolu, I expect you to be there.
I should be there. I will be there. I must thank you so much, Mr. President. It's really good having you in the studio to chat with you. I've been speaking to Dr. Innocent Okosa there. He is the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time. I will keep a tab. We'll follow up with you so that activities as they go on, we'll have you come in to brief us and brief Nigerians about what is playing out with ICANN, right? Do we have that?
Yes, please.
All right. Thank you so much.